has as many heavy weapons as the army. During his latest address, Gaddafi offered the opinion that Libya's tribal leaders, some of whom have been meeting in Al-Baida, should be taking more responsibility for local government and controlling their young people, though here they said they were more interested in the United Nations coming to save them. Gaddafi said he himself had become more of a symbolic leader of Libya.
As the proverb says, you carry a leaking bag full of water, it will make your backside wet. And that is your responsibility. It's none of my concern anymore.
This was an address different in tone and content to his speech of Tuesday night. Wishful thinkers might hope it sounded almost valedictory. Or perhaps in arguing that he isn't really leader and therefore isn't in charge, it was simply a denial of responsibility.
Peace be on Al Zawiya and its people.
Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera.
A prayer for those who died in the name of freedom. These are tribal leaders and representatives of eastern Libya, meeting to denounce the government of Tripoli and trying to forge their way ahead. Presiding was former Justice Mustafa Abdel Galil, who resigned soon after the revolt began.
We want one country. There is no Islamic Emirate or Al-Qaeda anywhere. Our only aim is to liberate Libya from this regime and for the people to choose the government they want.
Also attending were military commanders who refused to open fire on their countrymen and women.
I am proud to wear my military uniform, and I'm really sorry for all what happened. But I'm here to tell you that we are here to protect the youth, the people, and to fulfill any of your demands. The blood of the martyrs will not be in vain.
The fighting may have stopped in the east, but life is at a standstill. Military barracks are destroyed, and security is left in the hand of civilians. The classrooms of one school have been turned into a detention center by anti-Gaddafi forces, soldiers and civilians who were flown in and given orders to open fire on protesters. Among them, several nationals from Chad.
They told us there was a free flight to Tripoli. Instead, we landed here. Then they said that we should join the protest to support Gaddafi, but we found ourselves in the middle of fighting.
Despite Gaddafi's hold on power, Libyans here in the east of the country refuse his rule. There is no way back, they say. The people of the east will never fall under the rule of Tripoli as long as Gaddafi remains the leader of the country.
Well, still with me on our set here in Doha is Tariq Youssef, Dean of the Dubai School of Government. Thank you for being with us. Let's just talk about the defections that we've seen, if we can call them that. A number of people, be they military officers, be they diplomats around the world, be they people who apparently have been close to Gaddafi in the past, all distancing themselves from him. Is this significant? Is this showing cracks in his organization, and will it mean anything in the long run?
I think it signals that they no longer feel that he stands a chance of remaining in power.
But are they important enough such that their leaving will actually cause him harm?
Minister of Justice, the heads of various military brigades, Minister of Security, various ambassadors. I think the one resignation today, his cousin, his envoy to Egypt and many Arab countries in the last 30 years, Ahmed Gaddafi Dam, is probably the most devastating. This is personal. This is tribal betrayal of the highest order. This is the man who just a few days ago was supposedly recruiting mercenaries in Egypt and Africa to fight along Gaddafi. His resignation and application for asylum today in Egypt, it seems to me suggests that even within his closest circle, they no longer view him as tenable.
I mean, this kind of hemorrhaging of support is something we didn't even see in Egypt or Tunisia. And yet Gaddafi maintains that he's in power. How long can this go on before he finally sees the writing on the wall?
I don't think this man will go down by exiting or by applying for asylum or seeking refuge in any country. I take his words at face value when he said, "I will not leave until I die here." he'll have to be killed, he'll have to be taken out.
Well, in which case that will differentiate again this from the Egyptian uprising, for instance, because all these other ones have been peaceful. You're suggesting that this needs to get violent from the protesters' side as well?
Not necessarily. I'm counting on what remains of the military, the security apparatus around him, to make that decision ultimately. The reason why Libya might be different from Egypt and Tunisia, Libya doesn't have proper government institutions. Gaddafi has destroyed them. There is a power vacuum before even this revolution took place. Now there will be a bigger power vacuum. The country has been run by the security military complex for the last 30 years, and this has only accelerated in the last couple of weeks.
But we've heard the former justice minister, who resigned just 3 days ago, saying that there are chemical weapons in the country. Are we to believe that?
There probably are some chemical weapons or chemical components that could be turned into weapons. I don't think that will happen. That's a red line from the perspective of every country that I view around the world. Should he deploy them or use them, I think that will invite the maximum possible foreign response, including a military strike on the compound, to essentially eliminate him from the equation permanently.
Well, that foreign response is something we've touched on before and probably worth bringing up again, because it has been in many ways less than robust. The wording, in some cases, has been strong, but at the end of the day, words are simply words, and the action that many groups have called for, such as limiting the no-fly zone, such as freezing his assets, these sort of things have not been taken. Are you surprised at that?
I am surprised that it's taken them this long. But looking at what happened in Tunisia and Egypt and the slow, gradual acceleration of that response, it seems to me in Libya, their uncertainty, their questions about what would come after Gaddafi, and their need to have some assurance, some faith and confidence both in Libyans and in Libyan nationals who would come afterwards and help fill that vacuum is even bigger. Remember, this is a country that was isolated from the world for a very long time. I think the West took it for granted, including the US, that Gaddafi will remain durable, that he will be around, and that he will hand over power to one of his children. Now they're looking at a scenario where, in fact, those basic assumptions are off the table.
The assets situation actually has changed a little. The Swiss, at least, have said they're going after his personal assets. But will that make much difference? I mean, Gaddafi himself said a couple of days ago that it was one of his arguments as to why he shouldn't be deposed. He said, I live in a tent, I don't have a house. And he was trying to suggest that he's not one of those despotic leaders who's robbed the country blind. Does he have significant personal assets?
He probably has significant personal assets, but I think in the case of Libya, what is personal and what is non-personal, what is public, will never be known, and Gaddafi has made it this way. This country has been looted, in my humble view, systematically for the past 30 years. I'm estimating hundreds of billions of dollars that have been stationed or deposited in various parts of the world. That is the money that he's using to buy off people, to get mercenaries, to help finance the regime. Should a freeze of the assets be instituted, and other countries would follow the Swiss in this regard, I think that would be perhaps the biggest possible disabling